I think that film editing, the public doesn't know really what it means. I found myself sometimes with people saying, what are you doing? And in fact, I try to answer that everything that happens after the director has shot the dailies, shot the film, that everything takes place in the cutting room. So from choosing, the pieces that you want to show on screen, to the sound, to the music, to the mix, up until it is going to be on a screen. My mother was an editor, and at that time, there was a lot of women editor in France, much more than in the States. When I was young, I used to go into the cutting room and play with the spools and do splices, and at that time you were, still scratching the film and putting some glue and then pressing. So, I was like at 7, 8, 9, I was in the cutting room playing. Then when I grew a little bit older, when I was 14, 15, 16, I was going into the cutting room and saying, what can I do to help you? And so that's how I started. I looked at her and then I started helping her. When I did my studies, I wanted to be an architect. And I was saying, I know one thing, I don't want to do my mother's job. But she was in Rome and a friend of hers was calling saying, when is she come back? And after a while I says, what do you want exactly? Because maybe I can help you, I can do it. And that's how I started. Well, in fact, I knew Costa from, I was married to a director, and Costa was his assistant on Monkey in Winter. So when Costa did his first film, he asked me if I wanted to edit it. But at that time, my husband didn't want me to work on any other film than his. So I said, well, no, I can't edit your first film. So the first 2 films Costa did, he had the same editor. And then I got separated from my husband. And I heard that the editor that had done the first 2 films of Costa was not available for the third one, for Z. So I called Costa and I said, well, if you still want me to edit your film, I can now. So that's how I did it. But on Z, Costa wanted to be in the cutting room all the time. And I said, I can't work that way. Because we would look at the dailies together, and that was the first week, and he would say, well, let's try that. And then we would see another shot for the same scene. I know, maybe we should put the third shot in second and things like that. So after a while, I said, I can't work that way, because I think we should look at the dailies together. You should tell me what you like, and then go out and let me put it together. And then you will have forgotten looking all the problems that you had on the, during the shoot. And then even when we looked at dailies, come back with a fresh eye. So then he says, okay. So then after that, sometimes he would stay in the cutting room, but he would play, he would do crosswords. So then he would do some construction with spools, the cores. He would glue them together. He sometimes did construction that would be high like that, and then all the editors in the editing rooms around us would say, I don't have any more cores. I said, well, normal, because, Costa is... And then he would choose the colors that he would find the core and the things. It was very funny. And so he says, well, yes, he's playing, let him play. When I received the Oscar for Z, I couldn't believe it. First, I didn't even hear my name when they said and the winner is, because I was sure that I wouldn't get it. I was very young. I was up against editors that were much older than I was, American, me, a French woman, winning an Oscar. That was in the impossible things. So then I hadn't prepared anything, any speech or anything. So I went up on the stage. Apparently they said that I almost run. I don't remember it. After Z, the next film Costa did was The Confession. And he told me that he wanted me to do it. The script was very well written, by Georges Champrin. So it really related very much what the film is. I started editing at the same time he started shooting. The lab was in Paris, so I would get the dailies the next day. So then, when you look at the dailies, you see the style that he wants. You see how he has shot. So to me, from the material that you see in the dailies, it's almost obvious the way you're going to cut it. Some editors say that they do a rough assembly, and I don't know how to do that. Because to me, when I start looking at dailies, you look at it, for a scene. You look at all the material, you look where the shots are the best, also where the actors are the best. Because, editing, it's also a way of making actors play. Not that you change what they've been doing, but just to try to catch the very single things that they do, the very small things, but that might be very interesting. In The Confession, or even in State of Siege, you're telling a story where they're brutalizing him, like not leaving him time to think, not leaving him time to do anything but walk. If you want to show that he's going to be walking without sleeping, you change shots to give the rhythm of it has been long. And every time he's walking, he's slower and he's more exhausted. But you can't stay 5 minutes. So that's why it has to be fast there.
Pour condamner l'espion et traître Laszlo Rajk, démasqué par nos camarades.
And the flashback as the flash forward were scripted. They're very fast and very quick because I think it represents what goes into your mind when you're in the position of Montand, who hasn't slept for such a long time. The flashback, they are very precise. There's only maybe one sentence from another, so it's just the information that you need.
Staline nous a enseigné que l'homme est le capital le plus précieux. Quand l'homme se noie, il faut l'aider à sortir de l'eau.
But the flash forward are really trying to explain.
Alors, la première chose que j'ai faite quand je suis arrivé en France, c'est venir ici pour...
And you couldn't have a fast flash forward because you would say, where is he? What happened?
Il faut raconter, Gerard.
Because also it says that it's a true story. So if it's a true story, who was there to tell what happened? London is able to talk about it with some distance that he couldn't have right at the time. So it's like a reflection of what happened, like 10 years later. So they didn't want to make it as a suspense. Is he going to die? What is going to happen? But to make it more understandable.
Oui. Combien?
Je ne sais plus, il y a 5 ans.
Marché.
Mais c'était pas pour ses contacts qu'il m'a remis de l'argent.
I like when my editing is fluid, which means that you don't even realize that the shots have changed because it's what you want to see on the screen. And if there is something shocking, it might be just because then it has to be shocking regarding the story. So you want to, maybe make a cut that is going to make you jump, either by the picture or by the sound that will go with the picture or things like that. The soundtrack was supposed to be done by the daughter of Lise and Artur London, Françoise London. And she started to be pregnant. And working on that film was very hard for her because it was her story. It was her that you see in the film. And it was too devastating for her. So she stopped. And then it was another sound editor that came. I mean, sound is part of the picture. Always. I don't think that it's a challenge not to have music if you don't feel the necessity of music. The fact that he's all by himself, with sometimes the off-screen sound of people, screaming, or of the guards, keeping him from sleeping, even when they say you can sleep. I think it's so strong.
Espèce de salaud.
The scene where he thinks he's going to be hung is very effective because the sound helps a lot. The heartbeat starts, and as he's more and more afraid, the heartbeat goes even more. The heartbeat is used as music, as something that really gives you suspense and anxiety.
Ils vont me pendre.
Qu'il parle, sinon liquide!
Ils vont me faire disparaître comme Wagner à Moscou.
And then, you know, the flashback of how are they going to explain my death.
Trop de choses à me reprocher.
There are really flashes, you know, as he goes up to the point where he's going to be with the cord around his neck. And then when finally they take him down, you don't have the heartbeat anymore, you just have the little birds. And then suddenly life is coming back to him. The archival material was not in the book, but because that happened just before Costa was going to do the confession, I think it was important to show that even if they had stayed or wanted to stay communist, after what happened in Prague, they had a very hard time, you know, keeping their faith in communism. So that had to be said. There's freeze frame and there's pictures of the real tanks coming into Prague, mixed with shot that Costa did. And so I think that it works pretty well because it's a question of emotion. Because all the photographs are very emotional of those people from Prague being shocked by the fact that they had the tanks arriving and people being shot. And the footage that Costa shot was really reactions of people. And the face of Montand being shocked too. It breaks your heart. The rhythm is also something that comes as a natural thing. When you look at something, you know it's long enough. You've had time to see it. You're not lingering too long. You just feel that it's long enough. So the rhythm brings you to, you know, say, well, cut. I mean, that's enough. I still think it's very effective.
Position réglementaire.
I think that maybe all the torture and the interrogation scenes, maybe we could have shortened it a little bit. But at the same time, I think it flows very well. And too late to change anything. After the confession, Costa asked me to come and do State of Siege. And if you think about State of Siege, there was much more torture there. You know, the torture scenes are different depending on the film and depending on what you show and how you want people to absorb them. For example, the confession is one way and State of Siege is another way because they are different, but they have to be as horrible both.
Vous avez peut-être eu un peu froid cette nuit.
Un peu.
In the State of Siege, they are not torturing him. They are very polite in the way their interrogation goes. And for State of Siege, Costa said, I let you decide how to cut the torture scene. And it took me 3 weeks or a month. It was so terrible to look at, you know, all the electric shocks that you put on all parts of the body. It took me a long time because you want to show them how horrible and how it's awful. But at the same time, you don't want to show it too much because then it goes against the film because you don't want to be thought as somebody who loves torture. First, I tried to put 2 frames or 3 frames. But then when I tried that, I thought it was not enough. So finally, I ended up putting like between 6 and 8 frames, which is a third of a second. But it's enough to give you the horror of it, but at the same time, not too much, so you don't want to see the rest of it. And putting it at a moment where you're not expecting it. So it's going to be a shock, but and short enough to give you a shock, but staying, I want to see more, but there's no more. We had a very good collaboration that became, even more film by film. And I understand what he wanted, and he liked the way I was editing. We did all those films together in a row. And I think we were just becoming like an old couple. Costa was saying, you're always going to be right at the end. And, we would fight just like, old couple. So, but I think it was a very rich collaboration. I think that you can only work well with a director that you understand what he wants to do with his film and that you have complicity with him. And I love the work that I do. If not, I wouldn't have made it for such a long time. And I don't think you can do it without passion. I think that editing is the last directing. It's the last writing of the script. It's the last chance for the actors to be acting. And you can change a film by editing.